the two-way ANOVA, last analysis we did in the class, it is the most intense and has so many different moving parts. I thought I'd do this short video on the question from quiz 14. That being said, I'm going to show you how I'd write it up for this one. Every research problem is slightly different though, and so you might write it up slightly different. And it's just this is how I interpreted it and how I would have written it up. But out in the real world, you may write it up slightly different than what I've written up here. In any case, the first question says a blank by blank ANOVA was conducted. And so it's a two-way ANOVA, meaning we have two IVs, and that's what those blanks are. They're representing both of those IVs. And what we're asking is how many levels are there to each IV? So I've mentioned several people in class that my master's thesis was a 2 by 2 by 2 by 2, meaning that I had 4 independent variables, each one with 2 levels. With this one, it is a blank by blank. If you look at them, you'll see that one of them has a certain number of levels to it, and the other one has a different number. The two numbers are not the same. So it could be, a 5 by 3, or what else could it be? A 4 by 3, something like that. The first part says there's a main effect for the video game type. And so if we go to, I took just the important output. All you actually needed was 1, 2, 3, 4. There's only 4 tables from, that just massive amount of output. There's actually only 4 that we're going to be looking at. The between subjects effects is going to give us the main effect for video game, the main effect for role model, and then the interaction between video games and role model. And so you can see our video games are degrees of freedom. We've got the 2. The error is the other number for the degrees of freedom, so 2 and 84. Our F statistic is right there. The p-value is there, and then our partial eta squared. You'll notice there's not a 0 in front of it. It can't go above 1. And so, yeah, this is where we get the main effect for video game, role model, and then the interaction. So that is from this part, the main effect for video game. That's all that. Participants in the nonviolent condition scored the lowest. And again, we could have written this up slightly differently, but for me, this is what made sense. And I got this from this table here. So the mean for nonviolent was 3.33. For violent was 5.27. For prosocial, 4.13. We could do an analysis to see which one's lowest, do a comparison there. But for right now, it's like, this is good enough because it's not really the question that we're interested in answering. It is the standard error instead of standard deviation, and they are slightly different, but they are like, if you have the standard error, you could get the standard deviation. If you have the standard deviation, you can get the standard error. It's the standard deviation is, if you divide it by the square root of n, is what you're going to get the standard error. And so we have that, it lists the descriptives at first, then this between subjects effect table, and then it goes through a whole bunch of tables just on video games. And then it goes on a whole bunch of tables just on the role model, and that's where we got the next numbers. So aggression, if they had a negative role model, aggression went up. It was, we can see it here, role model, we do have a huge F statistic. The means are, I think it's from 1 to 7, so a 6 something compared to a 2 something. That's going to be a significant difference there, meaning that if you have a negative role model, you're going to become more violent than if you have a positive role model. Bobo the doll. Think of that. So that's basically what we're doing, is we're having them exposed to something like Bobo the Doll, and then we're having them exposed to some kind of a video game. Is it a violent video game, non-violent, pro-social? And that's going to bring us to the last thing that we want to answer. Let's check this though. So yeah, there's the means for the different conditions, and then the significant interaction. We're going to list that. And then all the pairwise comparisons in the positive versus the negative role model were significant. Let me show you what that is. So this is the positive role model. This is the negative role model, and this is what kind of games they played. So non-violent, violent, and pro-social. The reason we have an interaction here is because we have a simple effect, meaning that it's not consistent across the two factors. So this one and this one are almost identical to this one and this one. The difference is pretty close. If this one right here was about here, there would not be an interaction because it's basically the same 2 lines across. If this one here was up to here, it would be there wouldn't be an interaction either, because the top one's like this, the bottom one's like this. If they look about the same, you're not going to have a significant interaction. But we do have one here, and it's right here at this point because we have a simple effect. There is a significant difference between positive and negative violent video games. Basically what it's saying is that you can play violent video games, but if you have a positive role model, it doesn't cause aggression to go up. And so that's like the entire question we'd be looking to answer. And also what we found out in this mock data is that if you're exposed to violent video games and a negative role model, it does cause your aggression to go up compared to if you just have the negative role model. And you could, do an analysis between this one and this one and this one and this one. But for that simple effect, I just wanted to compare those two. And that's what we did for the last part here. Of most interest is a significant pairwise comparison between pro-social model and the negative model in the violent video game condition. Again, violent video game condition, the difference between the positive and the negative. And we get that from this pairwise comparison. If we go here, violent, the positive, the negative, there's a difference of about 5.07, and it is significant. Again, they're all significant, but the one that's the most significant, and it's like kind of plays into an interesting research hypothesis, is that there's a difference between the positive and the negative in that violent category. Okay, hopefully that all makes sense. If it doesn't, there'll be some office hours tomorrow. You can come by and you can ask your questions. All right, thank you for listening.